Hi, everyone. It's our Talk to a Farmer Friday for every Friday, and it's 10 o'clock. We're here at the Farm Bureau headquarters, and I'm talking to the two Chris's. Chris Fredman to my right, and Chris Johnson to my left. And guess what? We're jumping back into the Future of Arizona Agriculture series. That was an 8-part series. This illustrious team in the agribusiness world is my 7th interview on the census or the future of Arizona agriculture. And I'll have one more, which will take place May 17th with Dean Burgess of the University of Arizona. I'm hearing voices out over here and in the atrium, and I'm getting distracted. But we're excited because now we've got this opportunity to talk to our farmers. And guess what? I don't have the questions. Where are they? We're having fun, everyone. All right. So, and then I'll just kind of go back and forth. I've got the stick microphone, so we'll go. So when we look into the future of Arizona agriculture, and again, Chris, we're doing it from the perspective of you guys as agribusiness professionals. When you look into the future of Arizona agriculture, what do you see from where you stand? And I'll start with Chris Fredman.
That's kind of an open-ended question.
And it could go on and on.
What do you mean by what do I see?
From your business perspective as an agribusiness professional, out and about, meeting with farmers all the time, what changes might you attempt? I know we've all got broken crystal balls. And Chris, I'm sure yours is broken too.
It's horrible.
But yeah. So what do you see maybe going forward?
I think from my perspective, for what I do in the field, I believe providing them the technical services that I provide, bringing more technologies as it pertains to water to the area is something that's going to continue to be very valuable. Awesome. Because that's always growing and changing, and it's hard to keep up on. So the more people we have involved doing that, the better we all are, I think. So
highlight real quickly what exactly you do on behalf of farmers.
So I own a crop advising company where I do provide irrigation management services as well as crop fertility stuff. Primarily down in the Pinal AMA. In the Phoenix AMA, I operate a program for DWR, Arizona Department of Water Resources, where I help growers specifically become more efficient with their water management through doing system performance evaluations and other technical services. So water flow measurement, confirmation, slope determinations, scheduling, helping them figure out how to schedule their irrigation so that they can do that on their own, just become more efficient.
The idea then is if I hire you, your services for me will allow me to improve the efficiencies of my irrigation program.
Absolutely.
Okay. All
Absolutely.
Right. Good. So same question for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mostly deal with farmers on their water use and how much water they pump or how much their wells supply to their farm themselves or irrigation districts. So things are becoming more and more modernized, more technology. Districts are getting grants in order to become more technical. They're installing flow meters and satellites to download information that they can get from their computers in their office, turning pumps on and off. Things that are less human involved and more computer involved. But you still need someone on the ground to verify that the computer or the flow meter is working correctly. So that's where I might still be able to help and assist farmers. Not everyone's going to install a flow meter or has the money to set up a satellite and do all of the technical things.
So you kind of just answered that first question. What do you see in the future as it relates to our Arizona agriculture? There may be even more amped up technology.
Yeah. Okay. We have to be willing to adapt and learn things that are going to change our lifestyles in the future. And it's going to move away from hands-on to more remote access. People can turn off and on their center pivot systems from their phones or their iPads.
Right. And when you say center pivot, for anybody that's joined us live and doesn't know what a center pivot is, that's a water system.
It's a water system that accurately applies water via a large pump in the middle of a field with sprinkler systems set out on a circular system, and it irrigates based off of a schedule that you can set up on a computer or based on plant needs or whatever needs to be done. But there's going to be some changes. We're all going to have to modify and become a little different and grow with what's growing in our industry.
Yeah, interesting. And for the two of you, again, agribusiness professionals, as I like to describe, you're really embedded, if I can use that word, embedded in the water improvement arena, right? So, my next question, and this is what I've been asking all you guys, I'm calling Aggie futurists. So you never realized that that's what kind of moniker you were going to be given, but that's what you are. And so I've been asking, what is the most pressing issue with agriculture as it pertains to our todays and our tomorrows? But it sounds like you may say it's the water issue, because I'm asking, is it policy issues? Is it technology? Technology is always going to be important and pressing. Generational transitions. You've been working with some of these farmers and ranchers for some time.
I think it's all of those things, Julie. I don't think you can narrow it down to one thing. The farmers on my side of town are dealing with labor issues, water issues, the cost of goods, of what they have to buy to repair their equipment, the cost of equipment just in general, $250,000 for a piece of equipment. I don't think you can narrow it down to just one thing that affects them. Just like any industry, there's so much that comes into play in ag that it's up one day and down the next. There is a big gap in that generation of family farms where the kids are not coming back, but there's a lot of them that are. I think it's a 50-50 split.
Cool.
You see people who you never thought would be in the ag industry like that lifestyle, and they want to keep it. Even though some of their ground is going to solar plants, they still plan and have farm ground that they owned, or they have lessors that say, no, I'm not planning to lease it. You will get to farm it. So those are good things to hear.
Yeah.
I don't see it everywhere. I drive down the 303 just like everybody else. And there's a new warehouse there every day.
Yeah.
That used to be farm ground. I remember when Cotton Lane used to have vineyards and citrus groves. Yeah. And that stuff's all gone.
And you're young.
And thanks. But and I was just there yesterday, and I really didn't know that I was on Cotton Lane, and I wasn't sure if I was at Peoria or Olive because the landmarks aren't the same.
Yeah, it's all changed.
It's all changed.
Yeah.
So, same question to you, Chris.
Well, you hit the nail on the head when I was reading your questions, reviewing this stuff. Those three things are huge, and like Chris was saying, you can't just pick one over the other. They're all important issues, and they all affect how we're going to move forward. So policy is huge, but it's not just policy with water-related issues. That is a big one right now because it's political, or it's become political. But there's a lot of other policy stuff that needs to be taken into consideration too for the success of our ag producers. There's government programs that are out there. We're still working on a federal level on a regional scope, where on a national scope, where we really should be more on a regional scope. But there needs to be things that are more tailored to Arizona because it's so different here than where it is in other places. So a lot of policy stuff needs to be changed. Our marketing, like Chris was saying, the cost of goods, it costs so much to produce the same thing that we did, 10 years ago. And we've seen those fluctuations where the market's kind of responded in a positive way for the producers. But now it's kind of reversing again, where the inflation has hit that industry so hard, but our end price for our producers has dropped considerably. So we have issues with water, sure. We always have. For as
Right.
long as I've been in the industry, water's always been a big thing. But there's a lot of other policy issues that need to be taken into consideration locally, regionally, and nationally that will affect us and affect our future here. Generational stuff as well, going into that one. Yeah, there are a handful of kids, if you will, since I'm not a spring chicken anymore, kids that are wanting to stay in the business, but they don't have the same skill set, let's say, of their parents or their grandparents. And so it's a whole different generational gap that we're seeing, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. I don't know, but there's a bit of a gap. So some of those adaptations need to be taken into consideration too, so that programs like mine with the WCMP up here in the Phoenix AMA, we can help at least make them aware of some of the opportunities that are available to them through some of the policies that
Right.
do actually work, that are good. So
Yeah, it, on the generational thing, because you both touched on that, it's kind of fun to highlight. Last week, it was Kirk Dunn in Yuma. And one of the things he told me, he did not think that he wanted to be in agriculture in some way, but he didn't think he wanted to be in agriculture, that he wanted to come back to the farm. And then got done with his degree, fell in love, the love of his life. She said, I don't know about you, but I'm heading back to Yuma. I don't know if that may be influencing you, but
I thought you meant farming.
that too. But he is just loving it. He's just shining, and he showed. So, on the generational side of it, I'm like you, Chris. It's, even though it may be a 50-50 split,
Right.
it's fun to see those young people that do want to come back to it. So the other thing, and the other question I ask is, because of your roles, I mean, what's your client base? How many people do you take care of in a given year? Like,
Around 100. I'll guess 100.
so it's a lot.
Yeah.
How about you?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60.
Okay, so the next question is, you see a lot of clients. What are they talking about the future, about, and or, they have expectations. I'll start with Chris Fredman on this question. Go ahead, you can pass by. We're free form here, very relaxed. Maybe they just want to talk about family because they know what you're going to figure out for them, or what are the discussions centered around?
I think advancement, and
Okay.
and that really is kind of a blanket term, if you will, because it again, it goes back to those three things that we just talked about. How are they going to stay in business? How are they going to maintain their legacy? Whether their kids want to take on the business or not. How do they get them ready for that transition? And some of it, again, generational gap. There's some things that are going on that the older generation isn't necessarily aware of.
Or there might not even be in the mood to be aware of, because they're kind of wanting to sign off eventually, especially if one of their kids wants to take it on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it's really advancement stuff. What technologies are practical for them? What marketing tools or strategies are practical for them that's going to help keep them in business? What kind of cultural practices? What works on, as far as field prep goes, things that worked 20 years ago or was common practice 20 years ago, we're not anywhere near what we were 20 years ago as far as field practices go. So
give me an example of that.
Well,
now you've made me curious.
Well, back in the day, we used to use a lot of ground prep. So a lot of deep ripping.
Sure.
We're pulverizing all the dirt and all that kind of stuff, the root zone. And then land leveling, planing, a lot of stuff that really wasn't advantageous for the overall productivity of the operation. Not necessarily the crop, but the operation as a whole. So because
of passes through the field, more diesel from the tractor,
you could have had 6-7 operations go on before you even put seed in the ground. Where now it's a one-trip thing and you're done, seeds in the ground. So a lot of those cultural practices have changed in a lot of areas. There's still a lot of that transition that needs to take place, but it's happening. And that's where some of those technologies that I talked about earlier that are making their way here, they just haven't necessarily grabbed hold of everybody just yet.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you the same thing, Chris. It's not on the list. Do you ever feel like you're a counselor? Do you ever feel like you're
that's funny,
or like you're the psychologist with an
absolutely
notepad?
it can be really disheartening, and that's unfortunately agriculture gets a really bad rap. We all know this. We get blamed for the water usage and dust and all kinds of things, and really if you look at the economic impact that agriculture has across the state, it is ginormous.
Right.
It is still the basis of our economy.
Right.
Here. So
23.3 billion, and
yes.
U of A is going to be crunching the numbers now that the new Census of Ag has come out.
So it's probably going to change again. So in the farmers, the ag producers, whether they're dairy farmers or they're cotton growers, whatever the case is, everybody is doing everything they can on a daily basis to be as efficient and productive as they can be, with a sustainability in mind. And with sustainability in mind, that means it impacts them, it impacts the environment, it impacts the communities around them. So when we're getting, producers or people in the ag industry get this bad rap, it's really through lack of education, I think, awareness, where people, just general population doesn't understand how much work goes into our industry on a regular basis to help
to be
the
in a
entire
farmer
community.
Yeah. Hence the reason why we do Talk to a Farmer every Friday here at Arizona Farm Bureau. And to that point, if anybody has any questions for Chris and Chris, post them in the comment section. And Joel, let me know if anybody does make a comment, and we can attempt to answer the question. If it's a question that you ask that we maybe don't have an answer for, we can always come back to it later. Sometimes your questions inspire me to have other featured shows with this. So I love people's questions. I love your engagement. Feel free to do it. So I'm asking you the same thing, Chris, is, what are the farmers telling you? And I'm just going to stick my
foot up there.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of had a memo. We all wear black.
We all wear black. And
I see it from a different perspective. I think Chris deals with more of a whole picture when he's working with the growers, and I'm a little more narrowed in and specific. I work with irrigation districts mostly, and then I have what's left of the farming community that's rural and uses wells still on their private farms. A lot of our conversations focus around their family, what's going on, their friends of mine. So we always kind of visit and catch up on what's going on. I think that I don't know for everyone, but I think the amount of growth and industrial and residential growth in the West Valley has a significant impact on the growers all across the state, of course, but mostly in the municipalities. We're losing farm ground every day. All you got to do is drive down a street and things don't look the same as they did last week. And farmers as a whole don't own a lot of ground. They lease from corporations or from other families who don't want to farm anymore. So they don't know, but except from year to year, maybe how much ground they're going to farm. I have a farmer who's supposed to have a Safeway pop up on 40 acres in Buckeye on Watson and Miller. He's like, do I farm that hay ground or do I wait until they take it away?
Wow.
So those are daily changes that they're facing. So his 80-acre field now becomes 3 parcels of 20 acres, and he has to manage everything. His equipment,
and it completely reshifts the way he manages.
Yes, it manipulates everything, but the landlords want to keep it in ag until it's something else.
And the reason is it's the tax base.
Yep.
Wow.
So those are some changes. I see kids from the farm who don't want to grow up in farm. They want to stay in ag, but they want a different industry. They don't want to be on the farm necessarily. They want to stay involved. They love agriculture, and they've watched their parents grow up and their grandparents do it. but the opportunity to stay at the home farm may not be there, but they'll find an industry that serves it one way or another and find their location, their careers there.
And there are a lot of career tracks within agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
That's something anybody listening, especially young people, especially if you're going to the land grant university, the University of Arizona, you already know this. The tracks can be education, they can be science and technology, they can be
computers,
biology, computer. There's so many things that you can do. So, which is encouraging, and you can kind of understand why kids today, because of all of our options, can pick and choose.
It's huge. There's a lot more options to choose from than there used to be before.
Right. So do you, same thing with the discussions you might have with farmers, do you ever feel like you're being a counselor, at least a good listener?
You're a good listener, and they listen to us too, because we probably vent just as much as they do to us.
Oh, I mean, sure.
We all kind of get off on tangents every once in a while, and you can't help but to, I mean, politics come up in day-to-day conversations, and they want to know what we know, and I want to know what they know, and because the same streets don't always cross in the same paths, or you might hear something different, or they ask, what have you heard? And you just get an opportunity to share information and learn from the information, because they know something different sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to be encouraging.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I was saying earlier about how it can be disheartening.
Right.
When you feel like everybody's against you, and how are we going to continue the business? Are we going to go to college and choose a different route? Whichever you choose, I feel like I find myself trying to be a positive reinforcement to continue the effort. Don't give up. It's hard to do that sometimes.
Right.
To want to continue going.
Right.
Keep pushing through and dealing with all the different stuff that we're dealing with now that we didn't maybe when their grandparents were around. But it's important to keep this, like I said, this industry alive, because it is still our economic basis for the state.
And I have to say something to the two of you. You're actually, there's a dimension to your service that we don't even think about. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation, there's some statistics that some of the highest mental health challenges are coming from our agriculture industry. And I don't know if that's always the owner, the manager of the farm. You've also got your field workers, you've got your laborers, but the statistics show that mental health is an issue. And so when you spend time talking to the people that you talk to, it's really valuable, and it means something to them. You're going to come to them with some resources and some sources, and just that friendship helping hand. Because like you said, there's a lot of people that good segue, because you mentioned something. So to that point, just know that, and Arizona Farm Bureau even has resources on that for mental health issues. If you go to our website, azfb.org, and you plug in anxiety or mental health, up will pop a couple articles, and those articles will give you some guidelines. The biggest one that I thought the proposition to us with the most value is an article that even highlights things that you can look for with your family members that are showing signs of mental anguish. Maybe it's, go to the article. It will list all those things. It's a very valuable tool. But something you said, Chris, you said you take care of a lot of the districts. Mm-hmm. That's a good segue to the next question. Okay. NRCD serves an important role in agriculture in Arizona. Based on how these conservation districts operate, are they going to help us with the future?
I hope so. So when I was referring to districts, it would have maybe been a double referral.
Oh, okay.
I meant an irrigation district.
Oh, sure.
But that's okay. That was the primary one. But both Chris and I are board members on natural resource conservation districts that are subdivision. There's 33 of them throughout the state, kind of geographically set up to things that are specific. So, Flagstaff, Coconino County is different than Pinal County or Santa Cruz. So the priorities, the natural resource priorities in each one of these districts is different. Some places it's ranching, some place it would be forestry, some places ranching, and some places farming. So each of these districts has a board of 4 or 5 supervisors that try to set up priorities for the individual districts and provide sources of information or training or securing grants in order to bring different things to that conservation district. We get a little bit of money from the state every year to operate, But some of these more active districts actually get grants like the Buckeye Roosevelt district does in order to employ Chris with the water conservation management program.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to offer those services to our growers free of charge. Other districts may get grants to help with fire control or animal safety or animal security. It just really depends on what the priorities are in each district. But as a supervisor, we're supposed to be able to know what's going on in our district and try to bring those things to light and get the growers the help that they need.
So it's almost like a district created, obviously as a general rule for conservation purposes, but I also get a vibe that the idea is with finding the right resources,
Mm-hmm.
you're making improvements to that district's ability.
Infrastructure. That's true.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to assist and help as much as you can. Some districts are way more active. We work in conjunction with the Natural Resource Conservation Service
Right.
to help growers get government equip money or conservation assistance funds in order to change furrow irrigation to maybe a center pivot if they own the ground and they're going to have that ground for a length of time where the investment will stay.
Is worthy of.
So those are some things that the district can do with NRCS through the cooperators. There's a gamut of things. It really just truly depends on how active each district is and how they use their grant money we fund a lot of education within our district. Some districts, that's all they do, but that's their priority is education in the grade school level students.
And those board members are the ones that decide what the priorities will be.
We'll bring in cooperators and do working groups to try to get them to do a focus time with us to say, these are the issues that we're facing. This is what our problems are. So that we have a working group meeting that we take the discussion from that meeting and then pick the priorities.
What strikes me about that is this ongoing effort for improvement. And again, most people don't think about it. If they're kind of negative on the side of agriculture because they know nothing about it, they have no concept of all the things that
we have to keep improving like everybody else. Yeah. As any kind of business owner, you really need to change with the times. And just because it worked 5 years ago doesn't mean there's a better way to do it now. I think we're all a little guilty about doing those kinds of things. But you just really need to always be on the look for something better and an improvement.
Right. So Chris Fredman, what's your take with how an NRCD or district can help us with our future? I mean, the fact that you guys are always focused on improvement right there kind of solves some of that.
Well, I think to continue with what Chris was saying and to kind of piggyback on what I was saying earlier about policy stuff, the NRCD really is, my vision of it is not just a resource for growers on a local level, but also as a voice for the community for policy change or policy reinforcement. So in this case, there are some programs that are available right now for cost share for different technologies. And there's some that are great that have made it to the state that are not getting the attention that they deserve. Well, that's something I think as an NRCD board member, we can help bring attention to, whether it's through field days or workshops or just communication with members of that district. So I think we as a body can help be liaisons between our community and so many different facets of the ag industry as a whole, whether it's new technologies or policies or whatever or even counseling.
Yeah, or even counseling. I'm kind of impressed too with the gambit of it, and that each district is different.
Yes. Oh yeah, they have to be.
Yeah.
Arizona is such a diverse state that we do so many different. Yuma's different than Maricopa County,
right.
And how they farm in Wilcox is different than how they farm up on the rim.
Right.
Or ranch. Sorry.
So quite well. People farm ranch.
Yes,
well,
they do. They do.
They might have a garden up there.
Maybe.
So my last question to both of you is: are you hopeful about the future in the ag arena?
Well, yes, of course.
Good.
We want agriculture to stay in Arizona. We have to have food and fiber.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize, we all don't realize that chocolate milk doesn't come from a brown cow, and the ability to have fresh fruits and vegetables in our grocery stores that are locally grown is a huge thing. We've gotten so far removed from our gardens in our backyards or what's available to us, because now we get food imported from all over the world and everything is available to us on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And we don't always, other countries don't have the same rules that we have. Our country looks out for us on food security. I think some of us are just too far removed from the family farm, which used to be a priority and a much higher number of people. But I'm hopeful. Yes, agriculture in the municipal areas where it's highly populated will probably phase out, but I think there'll always be little plots of ground, I hope, somewhere where people have a community garden and things like that, and keep that agricultural force there for the community. Things will change. We'll just farm somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because we all need food.
Yeah.
And they're just going to become more effective and efficient, and the productivity of agriculture in America has improved tremendously over the last 50 years. And I don't see that changing. I think we'll continue to improve and expand.
What's your take?
Cautiously optimistic.
Where have we heard that phrase before?
I think a lot of it has to do with keeping that positivity, keeping people that are in the industry now, keep them motivated to stay in it. And to make the adaptations that are necessary to keep it going, like Chris was saying, community garden type stuff. There's a real big push for urban agriculture right now, especially in our municipalities where we have so much growth. There's a place for all this stuff, but who's going to do it?
Right.
That's where we got to lean on our newer generation coming up that, maybe they don't have granddad's land anymore to farm, but maybe there's a new way for them to do it. How do we help them get started? How do we mentor them? How do we give them the knowledge to be successful? How do we keep the big farms going too, so that we still sustain that part of the industry? So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm putting all the pressure on the younger generation.
It sounds like it.
To keep this going. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that have gone in this industry that have made it possible for this state, this valley, this country to thrive and succeed. And there's absolutely no room for it to go away. We need to keep it going. We just have to adapt. And I think we see that happening all the time. We just need to keep it going. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Any last, I'm tossing a question out here that you didn't have on your list. Any last commentary about, the future of ag? I always like to say we've got a solid land-grant university in the University of Arizona, and they're constantly doing research, and then Extension is helping link between the research and pragmatic approaches to it and connecting it. But any last-minute commentary about just in this conversation that something wound into your brain and you kind of want to get it out?
You hit a good point there. There is the U of A Extension. There are other bodies that are involved in the industry that are that have a huge impact on the sustainability of the industry. We need to all come together, and we need to be working together. We need to be formulating plans and executing those plans together. And I think that's where we can have our biggest positive impact, is by working together, coming together with a collaborative effort.
That's awesome. I'd like to hear that.
That is, everybody needs to work together. We don't need to work separate. We're all trying to work for the main good, I think, of everyone. And more likely than not, once I think we would get together, I think people would realize that they have the same positive things that they want to see happen. It just may not all happen in the same way.
Right. Chris Johnson, Chris Fredman, thank you so much for joining me again. I love hanging out.
Having us.
Yeah, I love hanging out with the two of you. I always learn so much, and I appreciate all that you're doing for the industry. on the agribusiness side of it. And individuals like you make me hopeful that we've got a good future in agriculture in Arizona. It's always transforming, it's always changing. That's the one constant in life. But you can be assured that our farmers and ranchers are doing the things that they need to do to make it successful. And that may mean brand new technology, doing what Zinke Dairy did when they lost their surface water and they realized they had to implement and apply a completely different irrigation technology. If you're curious about what that is, that's on our AZ Farm Bureau Instagram account in our Reels section, and it tells the whole story. It tells a lot of the story in at least a minute and a half. But everyone that joined us and those that will view this later, thank you so much for being part of Talk to a Farmer Friday, hosted by Arizona Farm Bureau. And the other thing that I want to mention is we now have it up on YouTube. We're posting all of these Talk to a Farmer Friday segments on YouTube, and we're also posting them on our website. So they're easily accessible. And for those that you know in your family that aren't into social media, they have another way to view these. So again, thank you. Stay in touch. Hang out with us. We appreciate your participation. Thank you much.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, everybody.